Seeds Forum Edible Yards. I want to start by thanking our panelists who meet all of you tonight. Thank you very much for coming. We have representatives from several excellent organizations in the area. PASA, Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, Northeastern Pennsylvania Audubon Society, as well as the Penn State Master Gardeners programs. So we really couldn't have done it without the help of these other organizations. So I thank you all very, very much. And I thank you guys very much for coming and dedicating a night of your time to come here and learn more about how you can make the world more sustainable right in your very own backyard. My name is Jocelyn Kramer. I'm the Executive Director of SEEDS, and our acronym stands for Sustainable Energy Education and Development Support. There's not going to be a quiz on that, that's okay. For those of you guys who don't know us, we are a local nonprofit organization that promotes energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable living in our region. And we do it both to support the health of the environment and our local economy through energy independence and energy savings. Just a couple little quick things about SEEDS and some upcoming events, because we've got a big packed evening tonight and I want to get started. I do want to share with you guys that I'm an executive director, I'm paid, but SEEDS is run by our incredible volunteers, and this organization just received a 2016 Pennsylvania Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence. So I'd really like to thank for that really great news. Some upcoming events for us I want to share with you. On April 28th, we are having our annual fundraiser, and because we promote sustainability, we have added a Swap-a-Palooza to our annual party. Now what that is it means you bring an item, anything you no longer need or love, and you bring it and you can swap for another item someone else has brought. So if you bring 2 items, you can swap 2 things. So you come to a benefit fundraiser for SEEDS, and you get to take home free stuff, which is great. Bring 3 items, take 3 items home. It's a lot of fun. We have an advisor, his name is Bob Ramel. He will be the MC for the night. He makes that event an awful lot of fun. So we're gonna do it every year. Think of us while you're doing your spring cleaning, and come to our Swap-a-Palooza and help support our mission. I do have flyers for that if anybody wants them before we head out. Tonight, a very brief, everybody's going to give you a brief introduction to the topics that we're going to talk about, and we'll share with you resources on how to get more information. We're going to videotape the event, we're going to put it on our website, we'll share some contact information. Give me a day or 2 to load that up, and you can find that there if you want to see any of that information back again. SEEDS is presenting this workshop tonight to promote sustainability. And one of the obvious connections is growing your own food means we're spending a lot less energy on food transportation, right? But locally grown food is certainly much more nutritious, and it does support healthier communities. Also, you're going to learn tonight about how native species of plants, shrubs, berries, and fruit trees means how we can help reduce the decline in pollinator species. If we plant more of our yard, and we have less grass, then we mow less grass. This is another benefit. But growing or foraging for your own food is really an excellent project for family and for friends. Get out in the dirt and get out there with your kids, with grandkids if you have them. These microbes have proven to boost immune systems and improve overall physical and mental health, as I'm sure everybody up here on this panel can attest to. So more about what we hope to learn tonight is how your very own backyard can either help or hurt sustainability in the region. So let it provide you with healthy food and educational activities for the whole family, as well as natural corridors for insects and birds. All right? So I'm going to try to keep on a tight schedule. We've got a lot of speakers tonight. We're going to do a Q&A session at the end, unless something is critical, panelists. I'll let you kind of oversee that. We've got bathrooms in the back. We have refreshments. We are doing door prizes at the end of the evening. So I'd like to get started by introducing our first speaker, and the topic is going to be foraging. Nathaniel Whitmore. Nathaniel's been reaping food from the yard his whole life, starting when growing up on a farm planting peas in the backyard garden and watching his grandfather pick dandelions for dandelion leaf sandwiches. Nathaniel has since been involved in small-scale farming and wildcrafting. He's regarded as the area's expert on wild edible plants and mushrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nathaniel.
Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Whitmore. I'm from Damascus, Pennsylvania. And I grew up on the farm. It was primarily a dairy farm, which was in the family. So it wasn't our, my family was kind of on the fringe. So we did take over the dairy operation eventually. But originally we just kept it even smaller scale. Had some farm animals and a garden and things like that. And then when I was a teenager, I got into foraging, which is very exciting, especially when you're on an old farm, because there's a lot of diversity on old farms. There's a lot of things to harvest. And one of the first things I noticed that I wanted to make a point of mentioning tonight is that if you're a gardener, wildcrafting is a great way to supplement what is produced in the garden. The garden typically doesn't come in. I mean, maybe you get some things that are coming up now or getting started now, but generally you guys start your seeds inside and wait for the frost to stop coming before you plant outside and wait for things to grow. So, you know, you're into June before you really get much out of the garden. And already, well, one of my favorite wild foods is maple syrup. So, of course, our area is known for maple syrup, and that starts early. This year, there was a lot to harvest besides. So sometimes during the maple season, the ground's still frozen and everything is kind of out of reach. But one point I'd like to mention, relating to the kind of practical side of picking foods and extending the diet, is that you can start harvesting roots right away as soon as the ground thaws in the springs, because a lot of things remain dormant. So something that I had just recently was evening primrose roots, which was a Native American staple vegetable. And a lot of times we don't think about it that way, but if you can recognize that the leaves are already out, the dried remains were there. One thing that I grabbed, does everybody know this one? A lot of people absolutely hate this plant. One of my favorite edibles. This is just a small example. So what I did, this was about 5 minutes worth of harvesting at the pile of gravel at the parking lot at the Apple Grove Park, which I don't know how many of you are from Homestead, but a lot of these plants maybe even came from your yards if that's where they were cleaning the ditch from. But anyway, you don't want to eat from those piles so much because of the contamination, but you know, this is a great example of if you find a rich spot. We have a lot of things here. This was, burdock is more or less a biennial, which means that you harvest the root the first year of growth or the spring of the second. So that's the rule of thumb for biennials. Carrots are an example of biennial, but typically they get hard and woody in order to support their stalk that shoots up, right? So this is the burdock stalk, and one of my points here is that if you're finding stalks of plants from the previous year, you can go up and find the roots, even if the greens haven't started, or the small greens. So one of my favorite wild edibles, several years ago, we did a workshop in town here called Eat Your Yard. And we did a big wild foods meal. We had, we even had hickory nut pie. It was really a gourmet feast. We had many things. Acorn cake in a tin can, like some old traditional recipe. We had a great salad and different things. And then we had this, not in this form. Does anyone know what this is? This is pokeweed. And these get very big sometimes, especially growing in that gravel pit down there. So what's interesting about this is typically when you eat pokeweed, it's only a few inches tall, and it might be hard to find, but if you learn to recognize these dried remains, you can spot it from a much greater distance away and say, oh, there's some pokeweed. Now this is coming from a perennial root that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So if you're seeing these, unless the plant has died for some reason, that means there's the poke shoots at the base when they're in season. They're not in season yet, or I would have brought them along too. But you know that they're going to show up underneath these at some point soon. That's an example of a vegetable that needs to be cooked, and actually cooked in a few changes of water in order to remove the toxicity. But it is a very delicious vegetable, reminiscent of asparagus, even more tender though. Elvis Presley even covered this song called Hope Salad Annie. That was about, yeah, it's a great song. So that's that's a famous Appalachia green. And then I have a couple things here. We can talk about this more if you want to come up later for ID, but just to show you from this distance, here's chickweed. This is one of my favorite wild edibles. It grows in mats. So this is called giant chickweed, by the way, because other chickweeds are even smaller. But when it grows in a nice thick patch, you can grab these little sprigs by the handful, cut them off, and it's very mild and delicate tasting. So this is an example of an edible that can be eaten raw and is delicious raw. And so, whereas wild lettuce is actually quite bitter and needs to be cooked, this is very mild raw, and I consider this to be like the closest thing we have to a lettuce substitute in my area. A lot of people don't recognize this one at this stage, but it's a very familiar flower. This is daisy, and daisy leaves are edible. They have a strong taste, so typically we just eat a little bit or cook them or mix them with other things, but added to a salad is actually quite delicious. You know, it's just a strong taste. It's not unpleasant. It's just strong. Probably better at large doses to cook it and not eat a tremendous amount raw. This is garlic mustard, another very despised invasive plant. It's a mustard botanically, but it tastes and smells of garlic. If you want to become familiar with the plant, you can come up and crush it and get the garlic aroma from it. That can be eaten raw, that can be cooked. It's very delicate in texture, so it cooks down pretty nicely. I have a couple little purple flowers that were blooming. This one is called ground ivy. One reason I brought this is because we now have the brewery in town, and then there'll be another brewery soon. And one of the common names for this besides ground ivy is ale's hoof, because this was back in the day when people used herbs, other herbs much more commonly besides hops to make beer. This was a very common beer making herb. I also picked this little flower, which is called lamium, or dead nettle, purple dead nettle. And I don't really use this so much as an edible. I've tried it before, and I'm not familiar with, how safe it is, how much you need to cook it, but I have tried it before, and I've used it as a medicinal herb. This one is in flower. Quite often when we're after the greens, we want the even younger ones, which I have some of that there too, that's younger. And then this is yellow dock. So we have two examples of yellow dock here. One is the broad leaf one, and then one has this, sometimes it's called the curly dock, because the margin of the leaf is even more wavy. And these get very bitter, but if you get them this time of the year, they're still usually not too bitter and more agreeable as an edible. And then that reminds me, there's another little guy here in that same family, which is sheep sorrel, which this is very similar tasting to garden sorrel, much smaller, but it grows by itself, so that's easy. And in that family, that's the buckwheat family, we also have a really important wild edible called Japanese knotweed, another very despised herb. So one of the interesting things about this is there's enough knotweed growing in this area to everyone could be making knotweed pie on a regular basis and shipping it out of the area to New York City bakeries, perhaps, things like this. It's a tremendous source of food. Now, a lot of these wild foods you don't necessarily want to eat tons of. Oxalic acid, for instance, is present in a lot of these things, which interferes with calcium metabolism. And there's, in general, wild foods tend to have a much stronger, more intense nature, so some of them have to be cooked. A lot of people think wild foodism and raw foodism are kind of hand in hand, but they're very different because you can't just go out there and eat a lot of things raw. But if you're into cooking greens and cooking root vegetables and things like that, there really is a tremendous abundance. One other thing I want to mention, I have cards in the back there, both for my website, which I do a lot of programs, and you can check out my schedule. And then we also have the Mushroom Club brochure sitting back there, and there's some cards for the club. I don't have a lot of these, so I'm just going to mention it, and you can come up. This was a walk that the club did at Apple Grove. We didn't find a lot. It was a very dry spring, but there is a pile of morels and a couple other edible mushrooms in this picture. So that's from right around the corner, right where all this stuff came. So you're talking about a very small piece of land that produced a lot of food, and more of it's to come. So I think that's all I can really say for right now, but if you want to check out these plants or anything afterwards or have any questions, just let me know.
Next, folks, we have Bobby Morgan, and he's going to talk today about growing fruits. Bobby has been a Penn State Master Gardener for 14 years. He helped start the school gardens, 18 raised beds measuring 3 by 12 foot. His area of special interest is blueberries. He has a 20-plus acre family-owned blueberry farm in Paupack. Bobby focuses on plants, nutrition, and pest management. He has been pursuing a degree in horticulture for the past 7 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobby Morgan.
Before I sit down and start, my one sales pitch. Anybody that's interested in blueberries, any small fruit production at home or whatever, even though I'm specifically going to talk to you tonight about blueberries, Penn State has a fantastic publication called Small Scale Fruit Production. You can find it, information how to get it here in the extension office, or we all know how to Google Penn State's publication website or whatever, but it covers brambles, apples, you name it. It's in here, and it's very well written, and it's kind of, for the backyard grower, small scale, it is probably the Bible, okay? I take that with me wherever I go. All righty. What I have for you tonight is, I'm going to briefly give you a few slides and some information on basic blueberry gardening at home. I do it on a commercial scale, like she said, of about 20 acres. It's a little different. It's a little more difficult than doing it at home. But like I said, you can do it because blueberries are very user-friendly, and I have yet to meet a blueberry I didn't like. So there are lots of them out there, lots of different varieties. I'm going to share some of it with you tonight. Some of the, actually, you've seen that, okay? Just basic needs for blueberries. First thing you should do, it says right here, we need a low pH and high organic matter in the soil. The easiest way to find out if we have the right pH is, again, come here to the office with a $10 bill in your hand, go into the extension office and say you need a soil test kit, okay? It's the first thing you do before you plant anything is find out if your soil will support what you want to grow. Because blueberries are a little fussy on the pH, okay? They do like it a little tart, okay? Blueberries like 5 or below. 4 or 5 to 5 is a really nice pH. We typically garden in our home gardens. We like them somewhere between 6 and 7. Somewhere in there, depends on who you talk to. And pH is a very broad scale. It's the difference between a pH of 5.1 and 5.2 it's 10 times greater. But the difference between 5.1 and 5.3 is 100 times greater. So you can see the importance of knowing your pH. And like I said, blueberries will let you know if the pH is incorrect. And these are basically what you want to find out with your soil test. They're all self-explanatory forms. It's just checking boxes. You read the page and you fill in exactly what you need. You put your soil sample, a cup of soil in a little baggie, and for about $3 worth of postage, you send it to Penn State's lab in 7 to 10 days. You'll have your results back, and you will also have a nice little formula of what you need to do. And let me see, adjusting pH down, staying, because I know most people don't want to use nasty chemicals. Sulfur is a great way to drop our pH. Just be aware that, as it says, you need about a year for changes to take place. It's not like having a headache and going to the medicine cabinet and taking a Tylenol, and in 15 minutes say, oh, it's better. It doesn't work that way with adjusting the soil.
How far down in the ground do you take the soil?
6 inches, 8 inches, down to where the roots are going to be. Okay? Don't scoop off the top layer of soil, stir it up and get down. Think of where the roots are going to be and grabbing all their nutrition and moisture and everything in the grow zone is where you want your soil from. You acidify the entire area. Now, the last line, using ammonium sulfate and urea are the two preferred fertilizers for blueberries. You can buy the ammonium sulfate from most of the local garden centers, Agways, whatever in town. I'm not endorsing this company, but the brand Espoma out of South Jersey has a lot of organic products, and I know a lot of us are worried about that. Ammonium sulfate gives them a nice, about 24% nitrogen, and the sulfate is the sulfur that keeps the pH low. If you use a urea, you're basically giving them about 42% nitrogen, and so you have to be very careful, and no sulfur for controlling the pH. So my recommendation is use ammonium sulfate, and like I said, just keep an eye on your soil. Soil tests about every 3 years. Using organic matter, compost, things like that, that's a win-win. Number one, like I said, with the kids in school, working with 6th graders, all right? I do school gardens that the budget is basically what I might have in my pocket that day. The gardens came with a grant, okay? And then the rest of it is we run around the community and beg, borrow, and steal for the gardens and stuff. And I tell the kids that one of the nice things about compost is we've recycled and we've reused to the point where we get compost, which I like to call black gold. And the best thing about it is the cost. It's free. And I don't think there's a better mix out there for gardening and growing and planting than compost. Just know your source. Like Nathaniel said, you've got to watch, where you may get things to compost if the area's been contaminated, stuff like that. You've got to watch what they're dumping. I was in Philly yesterday, and coming out on the expressway, I looked towards the river, and I saw these piles of compost, leaves, whatever, probably from the streets of Philadelphia. And they were probably longer than a football field, and just row after row after row, and I'm thinking, oh, that would be so great to have access to. But then I looked, and every once in a while I'd see a tire. In the middle of the pile, I'd see a couple of big hunks of concrete. So I thought, well, probably a good idea just to drive on by, because, again, it's probably a contaminated site, and I don't think I'm going to live long enough for the tires to compost down and reuse in my garden, so, we just pass on that. Mending the planting hole, and this is really important. When you dig your hole to put the blueberry bush in, don't set your container down and say, trace it and dig the hole that big. We all know that we should dig a hole about twice the size as the plant we're using. And again, be kind to the plant, all right? You're not putting it in the ground because you want to torture it or it did something bad to you. You want this guy to do you a really big favor and give you these little blue dynamos that we all love so much. So at least when we put the soil back, amend it with a really good organic material. Again, compost if you have it. If you can't have it, you can buy, in some garden centers, you can buy compost. Again, read the bag, know the company, read the label, and you should be okay. Just blend it in and fill the hole back in with this new, it's basically a meal for the plants. I like to leave the plants alone for the first year. As you can see, the soil is going to help us spread the roots out because it's going to be a little softer, a little friable soil, so they aren't going to be bound to that, whatever they were in. I live in Pike County, so if I were to take a gallon container with a blueberry bush in it and try and plant it, I would have about half a wheelbarrow full of rocks because that good Pike County topsoil needs a lot of amending. So for me, it's very important to do this. Now, we've got the bush in the ground, And this is the part that scares a lot of people. Remove 50 to 60% of the new blueberry bush, right? Don't we all go to the garden center and say, well, I want the biggest and the one with the most limbs and the most leaves and whatever? Well, most of the garden centers around here, their blueberries are kind of pushed a little bit because we shop with our eyes, right? So when we go, we want to buy a blueberry bush. And if we can find a blueberry bush with blueberries on it, yahoo, we got it made, right? Well, I don't know how many of you have ever done that, but usually what happens is you take them home and you put them in the ground, and it's almost like that transplant shop, and you come out in a day or two and you say, my blueberry bush is sitting. Blueberries are all on the ground. Well, yeah, they were only there, forced in the nurseries, until you got them home and bought them. You know, usually you're going to get some type of a shock, and the blueberries are going to fall to the ground because you've just taken it out of this container and given it a new home and said, okay, now I want you to do something different than you've been doing for the past year and a half, 2.5 years in this little plastic pot, all right? So, to get a well-established plant, we need well-established roots, because that's where all the nutrition and everything comes from, out of the soil. So if we've got this big, monstrous blueberry bush up here calling for all kinds of nutrition and stuff, and we've got this little tiny root system that was in this little black pot, we can figure it's not going to work, all right? We're just asking it to do too much. So what we do is we remove about half, okay? And if you're a chicken, then do a little bit less than half. Nobody comes around and inspects, okay? Believe me, in the long run, you'll be so happy, because this thing will reward you. What you're doing is, when you cut that top off, all right, you're stopping what is called the apical dominance in the plants, and the energy now is going to move in other directions, probably back down to the roots, and the roots are going to develop because they don't need to support all these limbs and flowers and whatever further out.
And do I want to prune every year like I do a grapevine?
Nope.
No, you do it once when you plant it.
Mhm. Now, if you see here, there's a couple of branches of bud. I'll move them, you can see them, all right? The one thing I did bring, I didn't bring handouts.
Do you want the lights on? so
No.
they can see? Okay.
I think we should be all right. I'm going to give each side of the room 2 bushes, or 2 branches. I'll tell you right here. This one, look at the buds, okay? You can take it, pass it around, and then take this simple stem and look at that one, and see if you can figure out the difference. Nobody told you there was going to be a quiz tonight, did they? Okay, we need to do a quiz. The difference is, while you're looking at them, the rounder buds, as you can see up here on the bottom limb, they are the fruit buds, okay? Those buds will produce blueberries. The ones on top, those thin little spindly things, are nothing more than a leaf bud, okay? Now, the branches that are coming around, if you look at them by their color, they're a kind of a light green red. They are new growth from last year, okay? Next year, if I hadn't cut them off, they would have fruit on them. First year they leaf, then they will go into blueberry production. But if you look too, especially on this side, that new shoot, look at how long it is compared to the other one. And all it is leaf, okay? So when I came along, I did it a favor by cutting it off. A few more things the year of planting. Make sure you keep them watered, but don't drown them. A lot of people think because they go to state parks and lakes and stuff and they see, well, we saw blueberries out on this island and they were just loaded and they were in the middle of a lake. Well, a lot of those are huckleberries, not blueberries, and there's a big difference. Blueberries like moisture, not water, okay? They don't like their feet constantly wet. They like to have an adequate supply of moisture, is a better way to remember it, not water, okay? And the blueberry root system, I don't have a picture of that. Think of a Brillo pad, okay? Blueberries don't have a taproot. They just have this very hairy, fibrous root system that stays very high in the ground. An ideal blueberry planting, you plant the blueberry bush at the depth of its container, and then you mulch, as we're on right now. Once it gets up a little ways, 4 to 6 inches of mulch, and it'll compress and compact every year. And you will find after a couple of years when that blueberry bush gets established and gets up a couple of feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, The root system is basically established between your healthy mulch layer and the soil. The root system will stay very high. And you could almost go up to the blueberry bush and grab a hold of it and just say, come with me, and it would willingly. They don't, like I said, there's no taproot, they don't head for China, okay? Like I said, the roots grow at the interface. Keep them mulched, all right? I like mulch, clean mulch, okay? People use pine needles, leaves, but don't use just leaves, use chopped up leaves, let them break down for a while. The difference between like the dirty mulch that we get from the tree services and the bag mulch and stuff, when it's new and shiny, the microbes and the things that are in the mulch are not the ones that we want, okay? Because they're there for a different reason. They're there to break down the mulch and stuff, okay? Once the mulch is broken down and becomes part with the soil, then we've got all those other microbes in the soil that come out, and they're the beneficials, okay? If you take and chop down a tree and run it through the chipper and take that stuff and put it around your blueberries or whatever, pretty good chance you're gonna have to go buy another blueberry bush, okay? Because the mulch just isn't aged enough and it doesn't have the right things in it. And keep that level maintained, 4 to 6 inches every year. Again, remember, I said, you be nice to them and they will be nice to you. And a big question, mushroom compost. Mushroom soils around here when you go, lots of people have lots of different ideas of what mushroom soil is made of. So sometimes it's mushroom soil, it's a little iffy. But you gotta watch the pH and a lot of high salts in that stuff, depending on the growing area. Like I said, years after planting, just like I said, moisture, mulch, the ammonium sulfate. My theory is the first year, they've got enough work to do. They'll find their nutrition in the ground. Don't start throwing fertilizer on them and saying, oh, they're going to grow big, even though I pruned them, I got to make them grow big. The roots don't like fertilizer. You can burn those tiny little hairy roots very easily. Let them go the first year, or maybe towards the fall, you could put like 1 ounce of your ammonium sulfate around it and work it into the soil for the winter. But that's it. Wait till the second year, and then the second year, once you start to see growth, about this time of year, between now and middle of April, you can fertilize them. Varieties, here's a good mix right here. If you were to get 1 of each of these blueberry bushes, or better yet, 2 of each, that's even better. In this case, more is better. You'll have a fantastic blueberry patch. There are lots of other varieties out there right now. These are the go-tos. The mid variety blue crop. If somebody said to me, what blueberry bush should I get to start with, I would say a blue crop. It's kind of like when you go to buy a car. You buy a car from Europe and they say, well, it's got this, it's almost like a Mercedes. Well, the blue crop is the Mercedes in the blueberry world, okay? And a lot of the others are offshoots from the blue crop. The Elliott, don't waste your money like we did. If you like blueberries that don't ripen until late October and taste like lemons, that didn't ripen, go ahead. We put in a lot of these, and they're the most beautiful blueberry bush you ever saw. They have the most brilliant green leaves, white berries all summer long, then they turn this brilliant blue, and there are a million of them. And they turn blue at the end of August, and about the second week of October, you can probably get them down. They're that tart, the Brix level just they don't change the sugar. So, again, I did the work for you there. Don't fight it. Okay? And how many of you want time? Am I talk long enough? Okay. Again, here this is, we're just going to keep fertilizing. And when you get to a blueberry bush that you've taken care of and babied for 6 years, and now it's up to about 5 or 6 feet, it should be prime, and that's when you should start getting those numbers that they tell you on the tag will produce X number of pounds per year, or quarts or pints or whatever. If you do things right, that's where we're at. And there, you can give it about 6 ounces of ammonium sulfate. Don't just dump it on the plant. Everything is around it, and work it into the soil, okay? I said, not much needed the first 5 years. You don't have to prune really. Pruning blueberries is a totally different topic. It's kind of a fun thing, but it's kind of hard to show in a thing like this. It's almost like hands-on, because almost every bush is different. It's one of my favorite jobs. I love to prune blueberry bushes, because I love to get rid of what doesn't belong there and leave all the good stuff. And I talk to them and I tell them, you know, I get rid of all that junk. Now make sure you give me blueberries, because I'm giving you nothing but the good stock. And what else are you going to do when you have 15,000 blueberry bushes to prune by hand? Days get long. Again, you're going to keep 2 to 3 new canes every year. Can you see this? Kind of? Okay. On my screen, sorry, they've got the number, but you can kind of see by looking at that, obviously that branch off to the right is probably the oldest branch, okay? That's probably a 5 or 6 year old branch, and that needs to become firewood, mulch, or whatever, okay? You want a nice mix, green, yellow, red, starting to scale up all the way up to stuff like that, because your crop keeps coming on old wood, like those new whippets that you have, nothing this year, but next year, blueberries, next year blueberries, but you gotta have something coming back to replace them, because you're gonna thin some of them out to keep the bush open. You don't want a great big jungle, all right? They need sunlight and air. There's a little better picture with the numbers. As you can see, look at 5 in the middle. You can start a fire with that if it were dry and make good kindling. Like I said, you just a good mix of different ages, and that's what I got for you tonight. They're like I said, it's really easy. I know we take a lot of heat as guys, and we never read the directions. But blueberry growing is really simple: food, water, mulch, okay, stuff like that. And if your wife is helping you, she's right. Any questions?
And what I can do for you too is, we are going to put the video from tonight on our website. If you don't have our Seeds website, it's www.seedsgroup.net. You can grab one of these on your way out. We have a tab called Forums. So the video we posted there, and Bobby, I'll put the link to the Penn State extension document that you mentioned as well on there. Moving on, I want to introduce Sarah Hall Bagdonis, who is the president of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Audubon Society. When someone says biodiversity, we often automatically think about it on a larger landscape level. However, biodiversity starts in our own backyards, and this concept is getting more and more important as habitats decline due to development. There are a number of things you can do to make your backyard a better microhabitat for everyone and everything that lives there or passes through. So Sarah's going to talk a little bit about natural corridors. And I just want to mention too that we were talking about backyards all night. For those of you that may not have a spot to garden, Jane, who's going to speak next, is going to talk about opportunities for to plant a community gardens as well. So we don't need to, by any means, leave you out. But Sarah, you ready?
Nope.
Okay.
You want to get a drink?
Do you want? Shall we swap with Jane? Sure. Your order, Jane. Do you need any visual stuff? All right, we're going to move on to Jane, guys. We'll come right back to you, Sarah. Jane Bollinger is going to talk about community gardens and vegetable growing. Jane is the coordinator of the Transition Community Garden that Seeds has now as well, and it's located on the grounds at Ellen Memorial Healthcare Center near Homesdale on Gulf Hill Road. And it's beginning its 6th year. Jane is very active with Wayne County Sustainable Farmers and is a member of the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, known as PASA. Some of you might know her as the former cooking demonstrator at the Wayne County Farm Market, something that she's retired from several years ago. Jane works to promote the idea of people eating real, homegrown food, whether that be growing some of their own or purchasing from local farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Bollinger.
I was really lucky as a child. My father owned a small canning company in the backyard.
Little loud.
sorry, you gotta do this. Just gotta turn it on. There. Put that somewhere, not too close.
How's that?
Wait a minute. Excuse me, did it.
Too loud?
That's good. But I can put my finger in my pocket.
I was really lucky as a child. My father owned a small canning company in the backyard, where as children we were paid 50 cents to work for him. Those days wouldn't fly now, but, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and so we ate 3 meals a day at home of real food. And I guess whatever I learned at the dinner table really stuck. Because after all those years of junk food in college, I came back to wanting real food again. Let me tell you about the community garden. Let me give you a little history. It was started by a group called Transition Homesteel, which is now in hiatus because all of us who were instrumental in the core group some have moved away. Many of us have just gotten busy with many other things in our lives. It's always available for new people to start it up again. Transition Homesteel worked to make resilient communities and resilient individuals. And we got a grant and we built a community garden. It's on the grounds at Ellen Memorial Healthcare Center. We have 25 raised beds. 10 of them are small, 4 feet by 8 feet, and the rest are 4 feet by 16 feet. We have had some great successes. People who came to us who hadn't gardened before, who have now left us and gone off to garden in their own yards. So every year I am out here seeking new gardeners. It's really rewarding when you see people come who have never gardened before. My neighbor's now dating somebody she met at the garden. We don't, can't say we don't let anyone use chemicals, but we really don't. We ask gently, and then if somebody insists, we ask more firmly. One of the issues of community gardens is getting everybody to pull weeds. So if you come up to see our community garden, you might see some weeds and you might bend over and pull some up. We've been really lucky to have really conscientious gardeners and a couple of really skilled gardeners who lend their knowledge. I'm a lazy gardener. I don't plant anything until May, and I don't plant seeds, and I go to some place where some good person in a greenhouse has started it for me. But we have a couple of gardeners who know how to start gardening now. I don't usually garden till May. And our most anxious gardener has been up there turning the soil. He went up to plant spinach and discovered the ground was still frozen about 3 weeks ago. But that hasn't deterred him very much. He also brings his grandson. It would be a real joy to see more children coming to learn how to garden. And I salute you for your work. So the point of growing your own food is for your health, to be more resilient. But we're lucky in this area that we don't live in a food desert. But that doesn't mean we don't have opportunities to learn more and to do more. And gardening is something that everybody could learn to do. If you don't have the space, if you don't have a yard, there We have a community garden near Homestead. There is a community garden in Beach Lake at the Methodist Church. Paulie was going to start a garden at one point, and it didn't get off the ground. A Boy Scout had it as his project. It never quite materialized. It's There's one in Narrowsburg. There's a very active one in Narrowsburg.
There's one at Abrams, it was just on the front page of the paper.
Oh, I didn't know that. So the point of all of this is resilience. How will we take care of ourselves if and when the less sustainable agriculture system starts to fail us? And I don't mean to be a dystopian, but I also want to be prepared. And so I've learned to garden. I invite you to come and check out our garden. If you know people who would like to garden, send them to me. If you have a place to put up a poster for our coming season, I have about 10 posters with me. It really only makes sense for people in the central part of the county to come garden at our garden. I know one year we had a couple from Lake Ariel, and they said, oh, we come to Homestead very often, but it didn't work for them in the long run. It was too far. The ideal garden is the one that's outside your back door. And if you're so lucky, you'll know that that's just a wonderful gift that you have. But ours is second best, so you're welcome to come and see it anytime. My phone number and my email are on here, and come see me afterwards.
Sarah, bypass? Yeah?
Yeah, okay, for a slow start here.
Yeah, I'm using my computer now, and it's an old.
Can I help with anything?
No,
That one recognizes it, Drew. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
just keep going.
What we'll do is we're going to jump over to the other half of the room, and forgive you guys, I'd also like to take just a moment. Many of you gave a donation when you came in, and we really appreciate that. I'm going to circulate the basket. If you haven't and you'd like to, please do. There's no obligation, but it will go towards seeds and support everything. I'm going to give it first to my husband. See what happens. Not to put you on the spot. What we're going to do is we're going to move over here, and I'm going to introduce Jessie Cacavale. Is that right?
That's me.
Jessie Cacavale and Allison Pack. And they're both going to talk about mixing ornamentals and edibles, a little bit about both of them. Allison, are you going to go first? Should we do it that way? Okay. Allison is a Broome County Master Gardener for 17 years, certified 1999. She lives in Homestead. She loves all things that grow. I'm going to turn it over to Allison.
Hi. So when Kathy asked me to speak, and asked me what I wanted to speak about, I told her I'd like to speak about the advantages of companion plants. Some of you may be, I forgot that. Okay.
Right? Didn't you need it?
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to. Can you hear me now? Yes. So, some of you may be familiar with the idea or the concept of companion planting. There are many advantages to it. You will have reduction of plant pests if you companion plant. It will enhance the growth and flavor of much of what you grow. It also will help with weed suppression. It's an ancient farming method based on diverse planting in close proximity to support each other. The Native Americans planted something that was called three sister planting, which maybe some of you have heard of. They grew it as corn, as something tall, beans, which would grow up the corn. Beans would fix nitrogen in the soil, which improves overall fertility for whatever you're growing around it. And the beans would also kind of stabilize the corn a little bit, making it less likely to blow over. A squash creates a living mulch, shades soil, which conserves moisture. So that the Native Americans did this commonly. We've done it in our gardens using sunflowers, cucumbers, and squashes. You know, so anything that would have those three characteristics of needing support to grow up and then growing across the ground. Living mulches are always a really good idea. By using a variety of herbs and flowers amongst your vegetable crops, you also attract a variety of birds and beneficial insects to your garden, which increases the biodiversity. Companion planting also confuses pest insects, confounding these troublemakers. If you have herbs growing amongst your vegetables, you'll actually watch things like cabbage moths flying around, like, where are the brassicas, where are they, I can't find them. And crops in the same botanical family, brassicas, nightshades, often have similar cultural needs. And they also have similar pest problems. So if you plant families of things together, you can focus on herbs and flowers which will attract beneficial insects that will attack these crops. You want to invite these beneficials into your garden, providing them with food, and then you want to try and keep them there by providing things that will shelter them. So if you had, for instance, alyssum, which is a low-growing annual, that harbors a lot of beneficial insects. They will, it gives them shelter. So you want them to stay there and raise their families in your garden. Mulch will do that in the form of straw. Planks of wood in your garden will harbor beneficial insects. They can live underneath those. Rotting logs, edging your garden will be a home for beneficial insects. The other thing you want to try and group together when you're gardening are heavy feeders, plants that require the same type of food. So that will help you if you enrich that soil in the spring, you can put your heavy feeders together in that soil. Not everything wants to be fed